Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and hello to the hillbillies and country music lovers. I'm Bob Robbins, and we're here to talk country music tonight. That's my life, and these fellas sitting around me, a lot of their lives too. And we're looking forward to this program. We hope you've enjoyed the first episode, and we're going to be talking about this episode tonight. I'm going to be visiting with Mark Jones. Mark is the son of Grandpa and Ramona Jones. We also welcome Dave Smith. Dave is a musician and host of Ozark Highlands Radio. My old buddy Charles Hames. Charles is a veteran country music journalist and a historian. And John Ramey. John is the engineer of Rainey Recording Studio. I just want to start with how much I enjoyed the show tonight. And there's so much information in there that a lot of folks probably didn't really know. I guess some of the folks that go back that many years, of course, will have heard their moms or dads or grandfathers and grandmothers talk about it. But just so much in that program to bring us to where we are today in country music. And we have 7 more episodes, of course, that we invite you to be watching as well. Mark, I'm going to start with you first of all tonight. You've been around this country music all your life.
Pretty much, Bob. However, watching this segment tonight, I learned things that I didn't realize went on as I was growing up, and about the Carter family and about Jimmie Rodgers. It was just such a good series, and I learned things about the Carter family that I didn't know, and I've been up to Poor Valley and played music up there with Dad and Mom both, and we would go up and work the Carter family fold. And that's the store that AP and Sarah had, and it was great.
We're going to get back and ask you some questions about not only the Carter family and Jimmie Rodgers, but also about your grandpa. He goes back a long way too.
Well, yeah,
and
he does.
Sure you've got a lot in that head about that. David, you've been doing this stuff a long time too?
My real love is old-time Southern Mountain music. And I was really interested in the beginning of the show when Ketch Secor commented that country music followed the path of the fiddle and the banjo, because that old-time music, which was an offshoot of the music that came mostly from the British Isles, the old fiddle and banjo stuff, that's where that kind of music started, and I'm really glad that they've focused on that on this first episode.
And of course, those two instruments have been in country music forever.
And still are.
And you betcha. Charles, welcome, my friend.
Hey, great to be here. I was amazed by it. I was blown away with the depth and how they go back, and they don't just tell you what they're going to tell you, but they give you background knowledge before they tell it to you. And I was impressed by that. No matter what you're talking about, if you cut the roots off from it, it dies. And you've got to have the roots. And this episode was just so good, and it's going to set the groundwork for this entire series and documentary.
Well, Ken Burns, I think, has done a super job, and I'm sure looking forward to seeing the next editions as well. John, what do you think?
I tell you, it really showed the building blocks of really where country music is even today. And just like Mark said, I had no idea some of the interesting facts about some of the entertainers, like the Carter family and Jimmie Rodgers. So interesting, and it just brings to light really what set the foundation for what we enjoy today.
And of course, we're going to be talking to you about the recording industry as well. You've seen a lot of acts come in, and you've seen a lot of acts go through.
Yes, sir.
We'll talk to you about all of that too. A lot of folks probably don't know, for an example, that the banjo came from Africa.
It sure did.
And a lot of folks probably don't know some of the things that we saw in this documentary tonight, how it all began with people's love for music all coming together. And what sticks in my mind, I remember going back as a child, and we picked cotton and corn and of course peanuts and all those things. and worked together in the music that we sang in those fields when I was a little boy. All of us kids sang country music. That's all we knew. And to hear some of those songs played and picked from the beginning, it's pretty neat.
Right.
So talk to me about those instruments. You've been around them all your life. I notice you've got your banjo here tonight.
I do. Well, my mom played fiddle, and now they were talking about other barn dances and things like that were going on in the country around other than just WSM. And Mom worked at WLS, WRVA in Wheeling, in Richmond, Virginia, and worked in Cincinnati, the dance and show that was done up there. And then they do these morning shows, and then they would go book their dates, book their shows, and maybe travel 200 miles from the city that they did. From Richmond, they'd drive a couple 100 miles. Well, at that time, there wasn't any interstates. There wasn't any 4 lanes. There wasn't nothing.
Probably not any paved roads, I suppose.
Probably not, And
they sure didn't
drive.
show them in the front of the documentary.
No.
did they?
No, but this was in the 30s, mid 30s, and they're just. In fact, that's why Dad got his name. He worked with. There was a guy on this documentary tonight.
It was Bradley Kincaid.
Bradley Kincaid. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
Who am I? Oh, thank you, Dave. Dad worked for Bradley Kincaid, and they would go out and play dates, and travel hours through the nighttime to get back to the station and do an early morning show.
Right.
And he was wore out. His voice is just, sounded like he was 100 and some year old. And people would write in and ask Bradley, how old is that old guy? Dad was 22.
23.
Yeah, he was 22 year
That's
old.
interesting.
And Bradley said, you know what you ought to do? Let me get you some boots and you just become an old character here on the show. And that's where the name Grandpa Jones came from.
It was a great career for him. My
was.
favorite song from Grandpa was The Christmas Guest. Oh, man, I love
Mine
that.
too.
Dave, what was some of your favorite part tonight?
Well,
All of it?
Well, all of it, but the thing that really intrigued me, and it was towards the beginning, they showed a lot of photographs of a lot of old black musicians, with a fiddle and a couple
Exactly.
of banjos. I just want to hear what they played. I just, looking at those still photographs is one thing, but to hear those guys would just be fantastic.
Can't you just close your eyes and hear it?
That's right, and all those old mountaineers sitting out in their field with a banjo in their lap, to be able to hear what they played would be a wonderful thing.
Charles, you've written a lot about our music and our artists and things over the years. What was something that really reached out and grabbed a hold of your heart tonight?
One thing that stood out to me was a lot of the people, such as Kathy Mattea, Rodney Crowell, the gentleman with the Old Crow Medicine Show, how they're not only on there giving their opinion of things, but they're just so enthusiastic. A lot of people think that artists are just intertwined with their own era, but I think sometimes people forget they're very much influenced by all that stuff in the past, and they love that stuff.
Yes,
it might not be what they necessarily recorded in all cases, or what you hear out of the in their recorded output or in their concerts, but man, they love that stuff. How Dolly Parton was influenced with those old songs, Barbara Allen and all that stuff. And you mentioned you remember "Beautiful Dreamer."
Yep. Some of those songs, that's what shocked me on the front of this documentary. Some of the songs they were talking about, gosh, we still sing them.
Absolutely.
You still hear
absolutely.
a lot of those songs in church, the religious type songs, and that's pretty neat pretty neat to me.
I was
Sure.
glad that they covered shape note
Yes.
music.
Oh,
'Cause that's,
yeah.
I think across the South, shape note music was very, very
No
important.
question about it. They had those
And
singing schools
singing
and
schools
conventions.
everywhere, and they still have singing
Yes.
schools.
Pretty good.
Yes.
John, what was your
You know, one of the things that kind of, and they just barely touched on it, but I think it's kind of important. You know, the technology of the recording started getting better about that time, and it really even shows up on some of those early recordings. You know, the first stuff was with a megaphone. It was connected to the device that they were recording with, and by then they could actually had ribbon recorders and microphones. And the fidelity was so much better, and they were able to capture that moment, you know, and it really had a performance instead of just trying to scream loud enough to hear it, you know. And, you know, that really kind of touched me because that's the industry I work in.
Right.
Now, John, I know that you were checking out those microphones, weren't
I
you?
was, and was thinking, dang, I'd like to have one of those.
Yeah, I figured
for our
that.
friends watching? What do you mean ribbon?
Well, that's the design of the microphone. It actually has ribbons inside the microphone, and the vibrations of it is how it captures the sound wave.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of, like I said, where they had to actually scream into the first Edison recorders, just to have enough level that you could, you know,
Hear something.
play it back, right? And those, they were able to get a lot more, I think in their words, a lot more of an intimate recording, which, you know, made a giant difference in the stuff we go back and listen to today. You can really hear the difference in the fidelity.
It impressed me how they had the old masters and how they had pressed that record.
Right.
I wonder how many of those worked and how many of them that didn't.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
would have been interesting to see.
That's quite a process in itself.
Well, I'm like you. That I love that part of it.
Me
Because
too.
Even
I've heard the word press records, but I really didn't know what it meant.
Right.
They
You
just
saw
squish
pressing
those
them,
things,
didn't
don't
you?
they?
Yeah.
John's grandpa had I guess, is this still to this day the only vinyl pressing plant in Arkansas?
As far as I know, it was the one and only pressing plant that was in Arkansas, Rimrock Records.
Right. Well, I'm sure that in the episodes coming up, we'll go from all of that to the tapes, and from the tapes to the
Right.
CDs, and from the CDs now it just comes through the air.
Right.
You pick it up from anywhere. It's-
Right.
Times have changed, and
Times
they
have
they
changed.
progressively change every day, and that's always pretty interesting. You know what impressed me about the show too, and I know I'm jumping around maybe pretty far, but Mr. Rodgers, boy, that man had it tough. Had it tough.
I had no
Anybody-
idea he was ill for his whole career.
Exactly, and tuberculosis.
Yeah.
Thank God that they've got that under control these days. But to see the man work as hard as he did and do the things that he did,
Accomplish the things
yeah.
that he
They
did.
said he recorded over 100 songs in 6 years.
yeah,
You know, and today
Think about that.
would be, you know, like 10 normal albums usually has 10 songs on it.
right.
And he did that in 6 years. You know, that's an incredible feat in itself, not counting all of his touring that he did.
Yeah,
You
the
know,
fact that he was passing out and
yeah, he was so weak he was
so
passing
weak that
out.
he'd pass out and stuff it speaks a lot of his intestinal fortitude.
Right.
I'll tell you, it does.
And you know, he's in the Country Music Hall of Fame and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Exactly.
He sure is.
exactly.
Because he influenced that music
Absolutely.
so much.
Yep.
You know something I was thinking about? We see musicians, superstars get up on stage with their guitar and they play, and it seems so easy. It looks so easy, but
It's
as
hard
musicians, Mark and I can tell you, it's hard work. Just memorizing a song to where you can get up on stage in front of a bunch of people and be able to remember all the words. That takes work. Learning all those guitar parts, that takes a lot of work, and that's something that I think the general audience doesn't generally think about, is all the work that goes
Right.
into being a good musician.
Well, you know, it's amazing. On this side, we look at an act and we think, man, what a life.
Yeah.
You know, they're making millions of dollars and they're out before thousands of people every night. But if you get to be around these artists and see sometimes how tired they are when they come to play, see how hard they do work, and then hop on that bus or an airplane and
The glamorous life of a traveling musician.
Amen.
I see that a lot working at the Folk Center. People come in. We have bands come in that do 250 dates in a year. Think about that. That's 250 different motel rooms in a
exactly.
year.
And
When you've actually got a home somewhere.
and yeah, you got maybe children.
Yeah.
And I've seen artists sit and talk. I've visited with them before about children at home that they didn't get to see and wanted to see.
Right.
I remember one time David Frizzell, for an example, his mother passed away when he was playing for us on a show. And the man, in the heartbroken state that he was, he came down and played one heck of a show and then packed it up and tried to get home to his family. You know, we were talking about the Carter family, and you know a lot about the Carter family.
Well, I know quite a bit about them. I've become friends with, of course, Jeanette Carter was A.P. and Sarah's daughter. And she was just a great lady. And we got to go up there and play before she passed away. Go up and play at the Carter Family Fold, which is a really neat thing. They're trying to preserve and keep the music of the Carter family going. Of course, everybody else in the world is kind of chipping in there doing that too, but right there at their home place. And it's just so neat, the Carter Family Fold. If any of the listeners get a chance to go, it's well worth going and seeing, you know, and they love to square dance, they love old time music, and it's just a lot of fun, It's in Poor Valley, Virginia.
You know, that's something I noticed in the show tonight. When Sarah married AP, she went from Rich Valley to Poor Valley.
And they were all
right.
poor in those days.
Yes,
Yeah.
they were.
You know what amazed me were the musicians at the early part of it that played for free, didn't even charge.
Yeah.
You know, and people that love music, they do that.
Something I'm glad they touched on tonight is there's hundreds of songs attributed to A.P. Carter.
Right.
But he didn't actually write
He didn't
those
write.
songs. He wrote a few, I'm sure, but a lot of those songs he just got from his neighbors. And
That's right.
Who knows who actually wrote those songs.
Exactly. We'll probably
No.
never
They
know.
said he would go walk in the hills. He would just go in search of poems or just words or stories or just whatever he could gather.
Yeah.
He'd just start walking, be gone all day, and come back with that stuff.
Yeah, if you're just tuned in and watching, we're talking country. That was the first episode of Ken Burns' documentary tonight. And if you got to watch it, we sure hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't get to watch it, you want to stay tuned because we have 7 more of these episodes of what we're doing. We're starting all the way back when country music actually started, I guess, is the best way to say it. Folks were introduced to the fiddles and banjo and the other instruments that have brought us. We haven't even got to the electric part of it yet. All flat tops, and personally, I love that myself. But it's going to be a great series, and we sure want everybody to tune in and watch. Anything else you want to say, Charles, that you...
Johnny and I have talked about this before, and I'll let him talk about it a little bit, but you could see the closeness or how close country and jazz, they're cousins, basically.
Exactly.
And you could definitely see that with, the Dixieland and even Jimmie Rodgers and some of the, recordings when he used other instruments. And I know John and I's talked about that. They're similar.
Oh, they are. And country music is such a melting pot of all these different influences that come together to make country music. And just to coin a phrase, it's really a slice of our Americana. Mm-hmm. It's our history. But all those different things. That's, I think, what makes it interesting. All the different influences, the jazz and Dixieland, mm-hmm. and then of course the real traditional styles of Jimmie Rodgers, and then they influence it with these different things. But then you can hear both of it coming through the music. It really makes it interesting to listen to. And then you bring in the Carter family, and they have a whole different flavor of music that's in itself just as interesting. Has its own characteristics.
What I love about country music, and they said this several times in the documentary tonight, is country music, it could be a song that makes you cry. It could be a song that makes you laugh. It can be a song that makes you miss a loved one that you've lost. I mean, they sing them at funerals. They sing the country music at weddings. They sing it everywhere.
Right.
And the way the music grabs your soul.
Right.
And what it does to your soul. And
a good song is something that anybody that's listening to it, that they can relate to it in their own life.
Exactly.
That's what makes a good song.
And over the years I've heard how songwriters would write a song, or an artist would write a song, and you would think it meant one thing, and then when you heard them talk about it, it was something totally different.
Right.
And you might think they were singing it for their child, or
right.
for their mom or their dad or their sweetheart or whatever. But when you heard the story, they were singing to a bird dog
right.
or something,
Yeah, music stirs the emotion.
Exactly.
And country music, in my opinion, may do that more than any other type of music.
Yeah. Anything else we grabbed out of this?
Well, I was
there's
thinking,
so much to talk about. And so
I was
much
thinking tonight, Dolly Parton talked about her mom knowing a lot of old ballads.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we hear those old ballads now, like Barbie Allen. And they're long. They're long stories, and they are an actual story.
Oh, yeah.
And even though I think to some people it seems kind of boring now to hear somebody just sing without any musical accompaniment, a long story like that. But we got to think about the days when most people didn't even read. So if you wanted to hear a story, or you
had
wanted
to sing it.
to take a story in, you had to hear somebody sing it.
Mm-hmm.
And in the days before radio and television, people hung on those stories because that's the only stories they got,
Right.
was those old ballads.
Yeah.
Well, when radio came in, and I love being in radio because you touch so many lives, and I personally don't think anything will ever really replace radio, and there are so many formats. You can listen to whatever you want, but the fact that you get to reach out and touch these people, and you get to talk to these people, and you get to visit with people when you go out and see them. And I notice all the way back when radio started, it's been that type of driving force. That really impresses me from the business that we're in. Not saying that it's perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it reaches people and it touches people, and I like that.
I was raised in northern Illinois. I never heard country music. My parents didn't listen to country music. And on Saturday nights, there was a show on the WGN Barn Dance on the radio with Arky the Arkansas Woodchopper and Donald Red Blanchard. And I remember all these acts, and I would lay on the counter in the kitchen next to the radio and listen to that. And for some reason, that music really got to me.
Yeah.
That's why I'm into music now, I suppose.
Well, they talked about the Grand Ole Opry tonight. I can remember living where we lived, and we lived so far back in the woods it took a week for the Grand Ole Opry to get through. But I can remember my mom and my brothers and sisters, we'd all be on the porch when we finally got a radio where we could sit and listen to the Grand Ole Opry and sing. I'll never forget, like when Mr. Williams passed away, and my mama, boy, it hurt her. It hurt the world. It hurt the nation. But that's the things that radio have been able to do and help people throughout. And then television comes in. You get to see this artist.
Yeah.
And then the movies, It's amazing to how everything has moved. And we're going to be covering all of that with these documentaries, and it's going to be really interesting for folks, I think, to travel with us. And to close out tonight, here's my friend Mark Jones playing a song that we heard all the way through the show tonight, Will That Circle Be Unbroken on the banjo.